Here is what you need to know about today. People around the world have been in awe this week of what they've been hearing at the Munich conference all week. Marco Rubio says during the Munich conference, the era where the West colonized the rest of the world was a good thing, and it should probably happen again. Did he really say that? And we're going to be back to the big map. This time, I'm going to be joined by Stanislav Krapovnik, and he's going to be asked the question, if the U.S. goes to war with Iran, what's going to happen? What's this thing really going to look like? This is the Sanchez effect. Let's do this. Hello again, everybody. I'm Rick Sanchez, and I want to tell you, I want to start with a phone call that I got once. It's real personal. I had just finished presenting the evening news back in Miami. I went back, sat at my desk, and the phone rang. Picked up the phone, and it was a man who said to me, "I'm your father. I am your father." Now, this man had been out of my life for a long time. I knew my mother had remarried after we arrived from Cuba. We were poor, penniless immigrants. And the man who had raised me was my stepfather, right? My mom had remarried. That man had given me just about everything. So there was no going back, right? That was my father, as far as I saw. As far as I could tell at that time, he was my dad, which is what I told my dad who suddenly called me that day. It was weird. It was weird, right? Now, I didn't disrespect him, my dad on the phone. I met with him. I spent time with him. And I even grew to love him and respect him. But my way of seeing it at the time was the guy who was there for me ever since I was a little kid, like 3, 4 years old, when I cried, when I was happy, when I was sad, or when I was confused, the guy who taught me how to throw a baseball, the guy who taught me how to catch a football, the man who put food on the table for me and my brothers, even when he had to go without food, that guy, because that's how poor we were, that guy, that was my dad. That was my dad. The point is, there's things that happen in your life where you can't go back. I can't change, right? Things were what they were at that time. So I thought about that as I watched the Munich Security Conference this week. For 62 years, these same people, tired institutions and leaders from NATO and the EU have held court in Munich to repeatedly announce their dominion of the old world. And it almost seems like they want it back. Like they've lost it, but they want it back. They want to say, no, we're the leaders, right? And this year, they did invite China, and they invited India, and they invited Iran, and Japan, and South Korea, and Russia. They were all there, but they were relegated to the back seats, obviously, if you watch this, which is crazy when you think about those countries, right? I mean, this is the future. We're not turning back. This is the way the world is right now. These countries have standing armies and GDPs and populations. The sheer power of those nations together is irrefutable. But here you have these leaders, including a leader from the United States, a guy who grew up in my neighborhood, right? Down the street from me growing up as a kid, right? Who stood up at this conference in Munich and told the whole world that the West can re-own, retake control, recolonize the world. I mean, did he really say that? I mean, it's a long speech. We're only going to give you a part of it, but yeah, it certainly seemed like that because everybody's reporting it that way. Look at this headline. This is a headline from People's World. It says, long live the empire. U.S. presses Europe to help recolonize the world. Take a look at this one. This is from India Today. A new East India company rising. Rubio's speech signals U.S. colonial aspiration. And look at the artwork they use of Rubio. He's dressed up as a Spanish conquistador. Trust me, the Indians know a thing or two about conquistadors. Theirs simply weren't from Spain, but they were conquistador, trust me, or conquered for a while. So what did actually Rubio say? Here's a sample of it.
For we in America have no interest in being polite and orderly caretakers of the West's managed decline. We do not seek to separate, but to revitalize an old friendship and renew the greatest civilization in human history. What we want is a reinvigorated alliance that recognizes that what has ailed our societies is not just a set of bad policies, but a malaise of hopelessness and complacency.
Can you imagine if you're in Africa or Latin America or India or Southeast Asia and you're listening to this? You're going, you're gonna redo what? You're gonna do it again? How you gonna do that? Let me continue here, not to be outdone, because there's more. So his counterpart, Rubio's counterpart, comes up on stage after him, right? And in this speech that made it sound like she is living in the 1700s, not now, Kaja Kallas, right, the person who does this for the EU, she steps up to the mic to let Rubio know that old Europe is also still alive and well and will reconquer the world if it has to and can do it without you, Mr. Rubio. We can do it even without the United States. Here.
And we're getting there, dusting off our gapes, pulling up our boots, revving up our engines. Europeans also know what this fight is for. Not only our excellent living standards, health and happiness, but lessons we have learned from our own history. Contrary to what some may say, woke, decadent Europe is not facing civilizational erasure. In fact, people still want to join our club, and not just fellow Europeans.
You know, when you tell people that people still want to join your club and people are still calling us, usually that means people are not wanting to join your club. It usually happens organically. You don't have to send an invite. But let me continue, because after hearing from Rubio and after hearing from Kaja Kallas and the rest of the old guard, Macron spoke, Germany's Friedrich Merz spoke. They were interesting. I'm not going to bore you with their long speeches, but they were basically sounded confused about where to turn next. Do we re-engage Russia, for example? Do we re-engage Moscow or not? Let them work it out. While they're doing that, up to the mic steps up the guy with the golden ticket to all European events. This guy's always invited to these things. Europe's favorite son, Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky. Now, if you're wondering, as I was, surely, given his situation, surely he will be a peacemaker. He'll try to bring harmony. He'll offer some kind of truce, maybe try and convince the Western countries who are his backers, I need you guys to love one another once again. Stop bickering. I need you, right? Is that the argument? Is that what he's going to say in his speech? Let's see.
It's Ukrainians who are holding the European front. Behind our people stand an independent Poland and the free Baltic states. There can be a sovereign Moldova and a Romania without dictatorship. And even one victor can think about how to grow his belly, not how to grow his army to stop Russian tanks from returning to the streets of Budapest. And it seems Putin hopes to repeat Munich, and not Munich 2007, when they only spoke about dividing Europe, but Munich 1938, when previous Putin began dividing Europe in reality.
So he's all but comparing Putin to Hitler. He says that Orban is too fat. He says war is going to be breaking out in Poland any day now and in other parts of the world, that there's going to be a war in Lithuania, he said, right? Yeah, that's the kind of language that's going to move the conversation forward. Not. You know, some, as I read the press that's come out of this since this Munich conference, which most of us didn't pay a lot of attention to because of Iran, right? Some are calling it the ravings of a madman during really mad times in this part of the world. A part of the world, Europe in particular, that seems like it's still trying once again to just figure itself out. All right, so the other part of the world that we have been focusing on this week and that I've just come back from is a part that has a lot of people scratching their heads wondering what's going to happen. Iran. The United States right now is basically parked at the doorstep of Iran with a massive fleet that they keep adding to, and there are threats flying back and forth between Iran and, of course, the United States. And hopefully they can talk it out. Both sides say they're trying to do so. But what if those talks go south? What if they're not able to do so? Trump keeps saying it's going to be a rough day for Tehran if this thing takes a turn. But will it really? So what we're going to do is I'm going to have Stanislav Kripivnik joining me in just a little bit. He's a military guy. He can put this in perspective because the question that I want to have answered for us is, what is the capacity of Iran? What is the military capacity of Iran and of the United States? And if these missiles start flying back and forth in the Gulf and in that entire region, how dangerous can this get? How big can this get? And how soon? These are the questions that we're going to break down on the map. So we're at the big map, and here's the big question that needs to be asked and hopefully answered. What happens if a war breaks out between the United States and Iran, as you see behind me? What will Iran do? What can Iran do? What does the United States have in this area that is vulnerable, not just in terms of weaponry, but also in terms of economic interest, for example? To answer that question, we have Stanislav Kripivnik, who joined us before when we did this with the situation in Kuwait. Good to see you again.
Oh, always a pleasure.
You ready to go?
Yep.
All right. So here's what we're going to do. We put together a couple of big maps. This is the area. In military terms, if this turns into a war, it would be called a theater. And what we've done is we've presented you with the basic geography so you could see where Iran is, and you could see all the Gulf states. All those little points you see with the American flags in circles, that right there, my friends, are U.S. military installations, U.S. military bases. And as you can see, they are all over the place. Let's start with a smaller map, just so you can see the Gulf area, because that's where most of this area is, most of the action will be. And there it is right now. Okay, there it is. All right, Stas, let's get started with this. We understand that the missiles last time there was this type of 12-day war, as they call it, came from an area right here. It's called Shiraz. It's just a little village. It's a valley surrounded by mountains. See that point right there?
Yes.
Now, that is 500 kilometers. So they have missiles, we know, that go 500 kilometers and beyond that. But let's start with 500 kilometers. Let's talk about the impact that Iran could have shooting those missiles just from 500 kilometers.
Now, Iran's got three types of missiles that we're looking at. They've got cruise missiles, they've got ballistic missiles, and they've got hypersonic missiles. Well, they have one type of hypersonic missile. Now, the cruise missiles are mostly in the 250 to 500 range.
Right within that circle.
Right within it. Of course, they could be firing from the edge. I mean, all of this area, what most people don't understand, this is all mountains. Mountains, valleys, forests, caves, natural cave systems all over the place, artificial caves and bases built into these mountains. This whole area is redoubt out. So they could be firing from any of these directions.
So when you say redoubt out, that means they're hidden.
They're hidden. They've got underground bases. They've got some of these areas that literally have elevators that can pop up a missile launcher, shoot off the missiles, and lower it back down.
Trump will tell you, yeah, but we could take those out like within 5 minutes. True or false?
You could if you knew where they were at, and you could get your air assets into place to do it. Technically, you could. How many of them? How well hidden they are? We don't know. That's a state secret.
That's interesting that you would say that, because it's not only, let's say, this 500 kilometer. Let's go to 1,000 kilometers if we could, so I can show them the next area that we're talking about. Okay, now we're at 1,000 kilometers. Right. Tell us about the distinction or the difference between those two.
No, first of all, just to add on to what I was saying before that, just to understand how difficult it is to find a launcher. Desert Storm, U.S. had full air dominance. Iraq's right there, open, flat desert. Not a single Scud launcher was ever destroyed. They couldn't find them.
Really?
The Air Force couldn't find them.
Is that? I just flew over Iran the other day.
Yeah.
When you look down from that plane, it looks like Mars.
It is.
It's just, all you see is desert and hills and mountains, and it's like, who the hell could find anything in there?
Exactly. That's the whole point. So when they say we can find anything we want, they're lying. They're absolutely lying.
Let's go to 1,000. There it is right now, going all the way to Saudi Arabia and Iraq. What would be the impact?
Now, first of all these bases combined There used to be 56,000 troops on there. They've lowered that down to about 26,000. So they evacuated 30,000 troops. But there's 30,000 troops, American troops, that's Air Force, Army, Navy, on these bases that are in striking range. And when you're talking 500 kilometers...
That's U.S. fighting men and women.
That's right, U.S. fighting men.
Give me that number again.
Right now, 26,000.
26,000.
That's not counting Iraq and Syria. Now,
we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
So they're all within striking range. They're not very far. They can run from that.
What about, we keep hearing about submarines and aircraft carriers. I think the Abraham Lincoln is over here, right?
Well, it's probably further down here out in the Indian.
But it's in these waters here.
Right.
That would come into play later.
That would.
And I think I have something that I want to show you. Have we got the video of the military exercises? I wanted you to see this because Iran has just put out videos of military exercises that they're doing to show what they have the capability of doing in those waters that we were just showing in the bottom of the map, which is actually on the floor. Right. Well, this is what they say they can do. I've got two videos I'm going to show you here. This is the first one, and hang tight because there's another one coming after this. I want to show you both of these, and then we can comment on them. This next one is them resolutely showing what they can do to take out potentially an aircraft carrier, which their supreme leader has been talking about. What are we seeing in this video? What can we learn or glean from it?
Well, right now what we're seeing is missile gunboats. So this is something that you would use not relatively far out to sea, but in the closer waters, like the Persian Gulf or near waters in the Indian Ocean.
They have missiles?
Of course. That's the number one striking capabilities. They have missiles. They have ship-to-ship missiles. Then you have the problem with the land-bound missiles that they can shoot out.
Right.
Now, here's the kicker.
Okay.
The hypersonic missiles they have, 2,000 kilometer range. Here's the other kicker. If you bring in an aircraft carrier within strike range for the F-18s, F-16s, you're looking at about 1,000 kilometer range before the planes have to be refueled. The refuelers have to come from Cyprus or Israel or these other areas, because these bases right here, they're going to get hit. So you're not going to lift refuelers off from there.
Did you see that one shot on that ship? I think they probably put that video out, and that comes in from their news agency, to show what they think they could do to U.S. ships out at sea. Could they really do that?
If they're close enough in, yes. If they're for the aircraft carrier like Lincoln, they would use the hypersonic missiles. Now, here's
I have that for you. I don't mean to interrupt.
No problem.
Since we have the video, let's show it. Let's see the video of the hypersonic. This is they call this the Fatah 1. Right? Here it is. There's a Fatah 1 and a Fatah 2, by the way.
What you're looking at, the head is the hypersonic section. The rest is a ballistic missile. So the ballistic missile gets it started, gets it going, and then the glide vehicle, which is the front third, it separates out and it accelerates to Mach 13, which is, by the way, what the Oreshnik accelerates to. It's maneuverable. And here's the problem that most U.S. planners don't want to admit to. If they're just looking for an aircraft carrier out there with just Iranian assets, it's going to be pretty hard to find. It gets out there in the big ocean. How many satellites overhead? You got over 150 Russian satellites. You got over 300 Chinese satellites. And the Chinese have just deployed Baodu, their super radar system.
I read about that last night.
And it can
detect submarines.
Exactly.
Under the water.
Exactly. They've got a boat out there that's doing intelligence gathering that can detect the submarines. But here's the thing. This is a synthesis of technologies. Because you've got Russia's deployed the S-300 and the S-400. The S-400 can run everything on its own in a smaller section. Fighter planes, bombers, other launch systems, the control point. It can track the 72 targets, service 24 of those targets at a time. By service, I mean try to destroy them. Target and destroy them. But if you combine that, these two systems are separate. Right now what we're seeing is these two systems are being integrated. The Chinese radar system and the Russian air defense systems are being integrated into one unit.
That's a big deal.
It is.
Because you said that, I've got another video I want to show you. Military exercises taking place in the next couple of days. And the Russians, there's a Russian ship. See that right there?
Yep.
That 545, that's a Russian ship. It's just come in, and they're going to be joining forces with the Chinese military and the Iranian military just to do military exercises in that region. I guess I have two questions for you. What's the significance of this? And what's the message they're trying to send?
Russia, China, and Iran have a pact. So you're watching alliances form in real time. This is a direct threat to the U.S. Don't do it. The smartest thing right now Donald Trump could do is send a frigate up to the Straits of Hormuz, go, yep, see, they won't close it, they're afraid of us, and go home.
Really?
And end this idiocy.
You think this thing can be really big and not good for U.S.?
Absolutely. For Russia, Iran is the doorway to the Caucasus and Central Asia. For China, Iran is the doorway to Central Asia and further Eastern Asia. They're not going to let Iran fall.
Interesting.
It's an existential crisis for both if Iran falls or shatters into small pieces.
Because that's interesting. I haven't heard either China or Russia be thumping their chests saying, we're going to be there, we're going to do this, don't do this, how dare you. In fact, they've been kind of quiet about it until I hear about these military exercises now.
They've been talking to the U.S. They've been trying to talk to the U.S. anyways, but they've been doing it quietly. Like, they're not out in the middle of the media screaming, we're going to sink everything you have if you do it. But behind the scenes, they have been sending diplomatic missions. They've been talking. How far it's going?
They're not chest thumpers.
Right.
Yeah, Trump is more of a chest thumper.
But these ships, that's a chest thump. Look, we're here. We're unified. We're working with them. Don't do it.
This thing can conflagrate.
Exactly.
Let me show you now. Let's widen this out. I want to go to 2,000 kilometers. And when we look at 2,000 kilometers, and this is where the hypersonic missiles come in. A hypersonic missile is basically a missile that goes like 5 times the speed of sound?
No, it can go up to it could go up to Mach 13.
Wow.
13 times the speed of sound.
That's 13 times the speed of sound. Well, I figure you
Mach
have the
is
right
1.
number.
You're right.
Right. So in other words, boom, it's there.
3 kilometers per second.
Almost impossible to either detect or knock out.
Right. And the problem for American systems, by the way, too, is when that glide vehicle is going and it's in a plasma envelope, the plasma envelope forms because it superheats the air around it, that screws up with the American radar. It causes the radar to have problems detecting the object.
Has an American radar or any kind of American weaponry ever had to deal with a hypersonic missile?
Well, if you listen to the experts, they say the SA-6 can take out hypersonic vehicles. The Aegis could possibly take out. The thing is, they've never ever taken them on out because the U.S. doesn't have hypersonic vehicles, and they've never fired at a hypersonic vehicle.
So this would be a first time.
Well,
if it happens,
Ukraine sure as hell hasn't been able to do it. No matter how many times they say some grandma threw a can of pickles at one and took one out. Yeah, they actually said that.
So we don't know.
No,
this would be okay.
Exactly.
So let's talk about the hypersonic missile. The hypersonic missile, if you go from this region right here, Shiraz as we called it, can go all the way out here. I heard the hypersonic goes like 1.6, 1.7 kilometers, which is somewhere just inside of that line. Correct? Why does Cyprus come into play?
Well, Cyprus has 2 military bases from the English. They've had it over 100 years. The English have been up there. There's ports and there's Air Force bases. So the English tankers are up there, by the way, now.
So the NATO guys are going to be there, backing up the U.S. forces.
And the Gerald Ford is somewhere in this area.
Aircraft carrier.
Right. I don't think it's arrived yet. It's supposed to arrive tomorrow. So it's going to be somewhere between Israel and Cyprus.
So Gerald Ford aircraft carrier in the Mediterranean, Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier in here.
Right. And there's Israel. The Iranians know who's pushing Trump.
Right.
Netanyahu's had, 7 visits in the first year of the Trump administration. That's unprecedented for a leader to come 7 times to a different country. And they know Netanyahu was just there, and he's pushing it. So they've said and the Israelis try to play it, sneaky. If Trump attacks, we're not part of this. And the Ayatollah said, no, you're going to get it just as hard as the Americans are going to get it because we know you're behind us.
Well, I know you're not here to talk geopolitics, but let's be sensible and realistic about this. This is not a war between the United States and Iran. This is a war between Israel and Iran that it's being waged or fought by the Americans.
Exactly.
How am I wrong?
Exactly. Just like Ukraine isn't really a war between Russia and Ukraine, it's a war between America and Russia.
And NATO and Russia. Exactly. Right. It's kind of a proxy situation.
It is.
Once again, it's interesting when you look at something like that. Let's talk about military interests. Now we'll stand back and so people at home can see there's the big picture, right? That's the whole, banana here. As you look at this, you start to see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And by the way, my producers were saying most of these areas is not one base. It's usually
a cluster of bases.
It's a cluster of bases.
Yes.
So there's bases inside of those. We just couldn't put those on the map. You know, I'm an American. I didn't know we have this much presence in this region. I think most people don't. That's a hell of a lot of troops, a hell of a lot of hardware, right?
And when I said 26,000, I'm only talking about this area right here. I'm not talking about the outer. There's over 1,000 American, I think about 1,500 Americans right now in Israel manning the THAAD systems. There are 4 THAAD batteries in the world.
What's a THAAD battery?
THAAD is a newer American anti-aircraft system. It has a great, huge radar that can see over the horizon. And the problem is the THAAD missile is literally a missile that has to hit a missile. It's a bullet hitting a bullet. Normally, your anti-aircraft systems, what they do is, you see a missile coming this way, they send a missile up, it gets within the range, explodes, and the shrapnel destroys whatever object it's trying to destroy. So it forms a cloud of shrapnel. This thing literally tries to hit its target. It's incredibly difficult to do. Now, so far, they haven't exactly, from what I've seen from the 12-day war, they haven't exactly proved themselves all that effective. But the radar systems are great. But here's the problem. The radar systems are also very bright. So they're a great target. Now, even between a war between Iran and Israel, these systems will get hit. And then Americans are dead because there's Americans manning it.
As far as you know, let me ask you this question, since we're talking about some of the actual force and capacity that the Iranians have now. They seem pretty able during the 12-day war.
Right.
Because they did a lot of damage to Israel. They did a lot of damage.
I know.
Some people argue Israel said uncle, and that's the reason the war really stopped. Of course, that's yet to be determined or it's arguable. But how much more do they have now that they've amassed since the 12-day war? I hear a lot. They say a lot. Could it be a lot?
I think it's a decent amount. Now, I've heard up to 3,000 missiles a month are being produced. I don't know. And I don't know what kind of missiles.
That would be a lot.
That would be a lot. I don't know if they're the 2,000-kilometer ballistics or they're 500-kilometer cruise missiles. That's what I've heard. I can't say yes or no because, I'm not there. It's a state secret. Israel took 6% damage. How do we know 6% damage? Because a couple hackers went in and they looked up the amount of buildings that were damaged and needed repairs, the orders that were going in. And they calculated out somewhere between 5 and 6% of the structures in Israel got damaged or destroyed. That's the 12-day war. And the Iranians weren't particularly trying to destroy high populous areas. They're still mostly hitting bases. So if this escalates into a full-on war, Israel's small. Most of the people are concentrated in several large cities. You can't miss a target because there's just not that much room for error. No matter where it falls, it's going to fall on somebody's head because everybody's concentrated in. Iran, 93 million people, and it's the size of Germany and France combined. It's huge, and it's mountainous. So it's a country that can absorb much more damage than the Israelis can.
And they can give and they can get, is what you're saying.
Of course.
They have the power to do a lot of damage.
Right.
To both the NATO forces, the U.S. forces.
Here's the thing. The main American weapon system is going to be used is going to be the Tomahawk. And that thing is carrying about a 500, 600 kilogram warhead.
Right.
With about a 1,600 kilometer range. So yeah, you can fire it from Israel and you can hit parts of Iran. The rest of the stuff that's going airframe that you're shooting missiles off, they're relatively small payloads. They're looking at about a 200 kilogram payload, maybe less, depending on the missile. Now, with the Tomahawks, if it's anything to judge from the Nigerian strike, out of 12 Tomahawks that were fired, 4 didn't detonate. That's 4 warheads that were found. That's a 33% non-detonation rate, failure rate. So the missile got there, it just didn't explode.
Yeah.
So Tomahawks coming in. The problem with Tomahawks, they're the heaviest hitting missiles. Now the Iranians shooting back these.
Tell me again what the range of the Tomahawk is. That's 1,000.
About 1,600.
Yeah. Okay.
Now the Iranians, and that's by the way what's going to be majorly the main missile fired from the American fleets. It's going to be Tomahawks. They'll lift the fighters up. The fighters will get to a certain fighter bombers degree.
Do you think the MO for the Americans will be to hit the weaponry in the area around Shiraz, or are they just going to go for the Baghdadi and hit Tehran and try and make a political strike rather than a military strike?
I think they're going to go for a country-destroying strike. Infrastructure, oil, gas, facilities, everything, just to ruin Iran as much as possible. Because what they believe, by the way, one of the things that Russia has given Iran, this is open source, is helicopter gunships and Su-35 fighters.
Right of those.
And I was asked, why helicopter gunships? Well, helicopter gunships is to fight the rebels that the U.S. is sponsoring, the CIA, the MI6, the Mossad is sponsoring. What we saw in this attempted color revolution was just a portion of their agents. They still have assets there. And they're going to try, what they're hoping to do is to do enough damage in Iran to fracture the country and then get these assets to start fighting. It's not going to happen, but they're going to try it. And there's a question about what role Azerbaijan's going to be playing just north of Iran.
That's where, let's listen to both sides. First, I want to play for you. This is the Supreme Leader himself, Khamenei, talking just within the last 24 hours. Let's take a listen to that together.
The US president keeps saying their military is the strongest in the world, but the world's most powerful military can sometimes receive such a slap that it can no longer stay on its feet. They say they sent a warship towards Iran, a very good, dangerous unit of equipment, but even more dangerous than a warship is a weapon that can send that warship to the bottom of the sea.
You heard him there. He's talking about the Abraham Lincoln and the Gerald Ford, right?
The thing is sinking an American aircraft carrier is pretty hard. It's a tall order because these things are huge. They have thousands of watertight compartments.
And they have their own anti-missile defense system.
Right. Well, against hypersonics is a very big questionable thing because they've never actually gone up against hypersonic missiles. And I doubt they'll be able to stop it. But you don't need to sink it. You just need to hit it and damage the tarmac. We saw that with the Houthis. Of course, officially nothing happened. The Gerald Ford had to leave real quick, so fast that a couple planes fell off the tarmac.
Yeah.
That was a little embarrassing. They had to go back. They went back to the Persian Gulf to get repairs. Now, the experts are saying, yeah, they got hit. They got hit by a drone. It damages the tarmac. Planes can't get off. Planes can't land. It's purposeful.
So what you're saying is by putting a big, giant aircraft carrier, one in the Mediterranean and the other one in the Persian Gulf, you're creating vulnerabilities for yourself.
Of course.
Yeah.
You know, aircraft carriers are great if you're going to fight some small country that can't reach out and touch you. And Yemen showed it can still reach out and touch you. Fighting a country that can get you at 2,000 plus kilometers with satellite uplinks to live data, targeting data, that becomes very suicidal.
I have been asked, since being in Iran and since coming back from Iran, probably 5 million times. I'm exaggerating, but I'm Cuban. We do that. Russians too.
Yeah.
Maybe not 5 million, but an awful lot of times I've been asked, do you think Trump is going to go through with this? Let's listen to Trump himself and let's read the man. Here he is. This is the most recent comment from Mr. Trump.
Typically, Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential. And we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal. I've been told that a deal is next to impossible. No, I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.
I think he wants to make a deal.
He does need to make a deal. He's desperate to make a deal. Problem is the Iranians, well, first of all, when he said the Iranians could have made a deal before, that, right after the Israelis tried to assassinate all of them.
Very arguable.
But in this case, the Iranians are very hard negotiators. Why? Because they've got the Russian systems behind them, the air defense systems. They have the Chinese Bao'u radar systems. They feel empowered. They've got the backup between Russia and China. So they're not looking to make concessions the way that the Trump administration is demanding concessions.
To hear you tell this story, this thing could get really ugly.
Oh, very quickly.
I mean, this thing could get really ugly and involve a whole lot of people and a whole lot of countries and become right away like a regional conflict and possibly even bigger than a regional conflict. Right?
But even if it doesn't go to that, economic-wise, it could. Well, the EU is going to be ruined.
Okay, so militarily, big problem. Let's talk economy. And for doing that, if you could, Gene, give me the tight shot of the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, that's the Strait of Hormuz, and there you see the area. Let me just say something, because I've been doing a lot of reading on this, and when I was in Iran, I started looking at this area. I mean, this is so narrow right here. This area, this is the Persian Gulf in here. This is the opening of the Persian Gulf. This is the Indian Ocean. But that is so narrow. Some people say it's like 30, 40 miles.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
You got artillery. You got tube artillery, modern 155, 152 artillery rounds that can breach that. They can go from one coast to the other. So, yeah, you could close that quite easily.
And you close 36% of the oil in the world.
Absolutely.
You stop it.
This area right here is all mountains. There's lots of natural caves. Like I said, there's lots of readouts.
Yeah.
They have land-to-ship missiles up there. They can pop them up, scoot them back down. So you can easily close. They can mine it. You can scuttle ships in the middle of it to make it more difficult for anybody to get through. You bring a couple of those light torpedo ships they have, the rocket ships, basically gunboats, and you start scuttling them, sinking them. Yeah. And they're in the way. They're in the way of the lines for the big tankers. The tankers can get in, tankers can get out. 36% of the world's oil. But what does that mean? Here's the problem. It's not just about price going up. You could see prices 150, 200. I'm not going to say 300 or 400 like some people.
Yeah.
But 150, 200. That's a massive economic hit on America, by the way. So the U.S. government, because while the U.S. has enough oil, it's still part of the global market system.
Right.
Prices are going to go skyrocketing up. Now, the government can either nationalize, I don't think they'll do that, the oil companies, or they'll step in and still install some kind of ceilings, which is still going to be unpopular for obvious reasons. That may hit Wall Street pretty hard. But that's the U.S. Now we go to the EU, and they will physically not have oil. They've cut off Russia. Most of their oil is coming from here. And the kicker is their second biggest provider of natural gas, of liquefied natural gas, is Qatar. And that also passes through here.
In fact, you mentioned China a while ago. China gets most of its oil coming out of this region as well, which is why they're doing a lot of their military exercises.
Right.
They're saying we're not protecting this because we don't want to be fighting the United States. We're not even necessarily protecting Iran. We just want to make sure that our interests are protected there. Right. Yeah.
Now, Russia can supply China with quite a bit of that oil for at least on a short period, because that would be a cut into India's oil and so on. I mean, this is 36% oil. But the point is, it's not just going to be about price. There's literally not going to be enough oil in the world on the market. It's all going to be bottled up sitting here because the supply and demand, they're very tight. And you take a third of that supply out, demand's going to start falling because you're going to have economic recessions. You're going to crush the worst ones hit are going to be the Europeans.
Yeah. You know, I'm wondering if this area here is where the United States needs to be most concerned, because here's what I've heard. And when I say this area, I mean the whole Gulf region. While I was in Iran, I was told by many sources that the Iranians are talking to these countries here. And these countries are assuring Iran that they're pressuring Washington and trying to disallow, if not forbid, Washington from using their territory to hit Iran. You heard what the Saudis already said. The rest of these countries are saying the same thing. They're saying if you hit them from our territory, they're going to hit us. And we don't want you to do that. So here's the question for you. Is it possible for the United States to engage this theater without using these bases as attack zones?
It's possible, but it's a degradation of force. I mean, you're cutting out at least a portion of the forces that are available to you. There are Air Force bases, there's missile bases for atomic, there are ports, for port facilities. And by the way, Qatar is one of the major American bases, if not the biggest base in the area. And Qatar is not exactly very happy with Israel after Israel.
Can the United States protect Qatar? Can the United States protect 1, 2, 3, all these areas here that are literally practically a stone's throw from Iran? How does the United States ensure these people in these bases and the communities that surround them, you'll be fine, you're not going to get hit? Can they even say that?
The United States assures that by having Raytheon produce 660 Patriot missiles per year. They can't supply Ukraine. They can't defend Israel at this point. The stocks are just down. In 6 months, they have not been able to replenish all the stocks. And in 12 days, the reason the Israel came begging for the U.S. to come in there and try to end this war because they were out of missiles. They're out of defensive missiles. So you're saying the Iranians still had plenty to go.
So you're saying the U.S. probably, based on the capacity and the overload that's been used up in Ukraine, doesn't have enough air defense systems to put in every single one of these places?
They're air defense systems. They don't have ammunition for them. They don't have enough ammunition.
The Patriot missile.
Exactly.
Right.
The Patriot missiles, the THAAD missiles.
Which is the
right. Even the aero missiles that the Israelis use.
That's interesting.
They just don't have. You got to figure. You got to shoot 2 missiles for every target on average.
Hoping one of them hits.
Right.
Right.
On average.
Yeah.
So sometimes you got to do more. Okay, you may get lucky on some of them, but considering how close, 500 kilometers, how close they are, they can easily overload everything in here.
One final political.
Plus drones.
One
Plus
final
drones.
political thing to end on. And this is what's interesting. And I thought a lot about this as well. And I thought about you when I had these conversations while I was in Iran with a lot of Iranian academics who tell me, you know why this ain't going to happen, they say? Because not only does the United States have a lot of interest here, Donald Trump has a lot of interest.
Oh, yes, he
here.
does.
The Donald Trump family is lousy all over UAE, et cetera. You're not going to dirty up, as we say, a place where you eat.
Yeah.
Do you think?
But there's one point that has even more control over Donald Trump.
It's Israel.
It's Israel.
Yeah.
It's the Israeli lobby in the U.S. How much money did they give to his campaign? It's around $300 million.
Well, the Adelsons, the Miriam Adelson gave him $300 million. When you combine it with what her husband gave her.
Right. So if you're looking at that choke point, I mean, Netanyahu went 7 times to the U.S. in the first year of the Trump administration, this Trump administration. 7 times. It's almost unheard of.
Well, he's not in a good place poll-wise. He's got a lot of problems. But some presidents, when they're not in a good place poll-wise, i.e. Bill Clinton with Monica, that's when they strike. Because they want the public to look at the squirrel. And
Absolutely.
that may be the case as well. We don't know.
You got Epstein on all the titles. You've got the economy. Absolutely. You know the saying, when all else fails, they take you to war.
Yeah. Smedley Butler?
Smedley Butler.
Thank you for the quote. Great job as usual.
Thank you.
It's always fantastic when you take us through this from a military standpoint and are able to show us what this theater could become, and we all hope it doesn't.
Of course.
It doesn't.
Like I said, the best thing Donald Trump could do is send a frigate up to the Straits of Hormuz, say, see, the Iranians are afraid to close it. They're afraid of us. Let's go home.
Yeah.
And end this.
Yeah, your mouth to God's ears.
Or at least Donald Trump's.
So that's it for us. Thanks so much for being with us, and we'll be looking for you next time. As we usually say here, thank you so much. Send us your comments. If you agree, disagree, or think he's wrong and I'm right, or vice versa,